Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce event today. We are having an exciting session for you. I think a very valuable and timely session about improving customer experience and using that to increase sales and improve retention in the post-COVID environment. So we are coming out of a very crazy time, as you all know, and moving into, I think, a new retail environment with new consumer behaviors, new shopping behaviors, new consumer attitudes, and a lot more leverage of technology. And in the ever-evolving and rapidly changing cannabis industry, how does this apply? So today we have Blaze and the CEO of Blaze, Chris Violas, with us. I'll introduce him in a minute. And we'll go through some great questions and discuss, how is the world evolving and how do we make use of that? How do we improve business activities, and not just for retailers, but for brands, for distributors, for manufacturers? I think right now, most states are limited in what we can do in sales. They have to be through retailers, but in the upcoming environment, I think everybody predicts that the longer term approach is going to have some kind of e-commerce opportunities and potentially direct consumer opportunities for those brands, manufacturers, cultivators, and potentially distributors. And so these are good things to discuss because I think they have implications for not just the next couple months, but for the longer term. And as consumer behaviors have changed in a way that's really an evolution and not just kind of a flip. So for right now, though, we'd like to introduce Stephen from Blaze, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Blaze, and then we'll jump back and introduce Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Like Chris said, my name is Steve Lynn. I am the Director of Marketing at Blaze. Just want to tell you a little bit about us. Blaze was founded back in 2017 by tech entrepreneurs and former cannabis business operators. And the goal was simple, to offer unified seed-to-sale software for the entire cannabis supply chain. Blaze has an easy-to-use front end powered by an enterprise back end that streamlines operations, simplifies inventory, and automates compliance for over 300 operators. Our best-in-class solution makes retailers more profitable, productive, while also creating a better user experience for both employees and consumers. Our system seamlessly integrates with over 40 technology partners, including Right Metrics for business intelligence and personalized marketing. And we provide basically powerful tools for cultivators, distributors, retailers, and delivery services to expand and grow their business. And with that, I'll toss it back over to Chris.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, I lost my camera there. Sorry. Okay, well, let me go ahead and introduce the CEO of Blaze, Chris Violas. Chris has a wealth of experience and has been managing a ton of opportunity and data surrounding consumer behaviors and what's going on with consumers, but of course, sales themselves. So he understands sales at all levels. Blaze has not only a fantastic point of sale system, but they also have a great e-commerce platform. So Chris, if you want to introduce yourself really quick to the audience.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. And thanks, Steve. Thank you to the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce for hosting us and having us here. We're super excited to kind of be back and engage in the community, to Chris's point, after quite a long year, quite an interesting year. So as Chris mentioned, CEO of Blaze here, been in the cannabis industry now for about 9 years. I've really seen things kind of change over time alongside Chris here, and really seeing the evolution of these dispensaries and the engagement around technology and the stacks that are coming up has been really exciting to see. And we're going to, dive into that today here. So with that said, we're based in Southern California, Newport Beach, not too far from, hopefully a couple of folks on the call. It looks like Orange County here. So with that said, Chris, I'll flip it back to you. Let's get into this. I'm excited.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. So we're coming into a post-COVID world, and a lot of things have changed over the last year, including consumer behaviors and consumer shopping behaviors. We see a lot more people buying online, getting delivery, and trying to find ways not to go into stores. I know myself, I was a big online shopper before, but I think even more so now. The main point behind this, though, is in general, we see a lot of consumers using more technology in really kind of every aspect of the buying process. And so, first question I have, Chris, is what buying behaviors do you see that are different for cannabis consumers?
Yeah, it's, just to answer that question in full, it's taking a step back and looking at what changed really when COVID hit. I think it's essential to set up this conversation. we went from relatively, regular buying patterns. We'd see things like, Friday we'd see spiked sales, over the weekend would be spiked, and then, first half of the week wasn't too busy. Right away, dispensaries faced a lot of challenges because all of a sudden we saw a lot of people buying on Wednesdays and Thursdays and Tuesdays and just irregular patterns of buying. So customers are finding new ways to engage and look at menus and dive into products, understand what they're actually buying. It's been pretty intriguing to see. But, just from a irregularity standpoint, things really have shifted. And I wouldn't say it's going back to normal from the data that we've seen. We've seen a little bit of a shift back to what we saw prior to COVID. But yeah, the buying patterns have definitely changed from, if you look at the timing perspective as well as the quantity. We also saw, a shout out to the baby boomers out there. We saw quite a big lift on certain age groups and certain segments of consumers during COVID. And obviously, Chris, we're going to get into delivery here. But part of that is channel commerce, right? And trying to figure out where can we get these orders from. When we first started COVID, it was, hey, I've got a website, it looks okay and it functions. That's great. I'm happy as a dispensary owner, and for a consumer, they could get in there and understand and navigate. But those demands, those requirements for the front end experience have certainly changed. The expectations are higher. Chris, you mentioned in Amazon, the word Amazon, it's like everyone's looking for that one-click experience. How quickly can I get through that shopping cart, and how accurate is it? Do they have these products? Can they get delivered on time? There's so many aspects to this. So with that, I'll take a quick pause, Chris, and see if we can open up some more questions from there.
Yeah, no, that's great. That was a great answer, Chris. Thank you. And it actually leads into what would be my next question, and that is, because I think you touched on it, how do you think things have changed for cannabis retailers because of COVID, and how much more focus is there on delivery now?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the inventory, just trying to get procurement has changed. Again, if you're having to, typically the buying pattern would be on, Mondays or Tuesdays, the general manager, the inventory procurement manager is going to look and say, hey, how do we move over the weekend, right? Do I need a certain purchase order for certain brands? That has definitely spread more evenly over the week. And so it's constantly looking and being aware of when, spikes could potentially happen. Do I have enough inventory? So one, the procurement side has changed a little bit because of the timing nuance. But then it became, hey, it's COVID. There is lockdowns happening. I can't get out. Although the dispensary is an essential business, do I feel safe going into there? So naturally, these essential businesses are looking, these dispensaries are looking, how can I better suit these patients, these customers, right? Some people are in need of this product. And so delivery popped up, right, as a natural way to try to figure out how can I best suit that customer. And delivery has been core to Blaze. It's been core to my life in cannabis, something that I'm super passionate about. And Chris, you and I definitely go back on that topic. But we saw a lot of dispensaries that really had no ambition prior to COVID to launch a delivery. They wanted to try and figure out who they could partner with to get the product to the store. But when COVID hit, it was quick change in operations, and let's spin up a dispatch center. Let's try to figure out this delivery component, which has its own set of challenges. So, these dispensary operators have been really fantastic in adopting to all the changes, again, from timing, right, procurement, inventory, from changing, tech stacks potentially to introducing delivery. I mean, there's a lot going on, and I would say I don't think that's going to be changing. I think delivery is here to stay, and we can get into the reasons for that. But one of the other things I would just mention is that the technology stack has become a lot more important, Chris, as you alluded to. One, to not only capture those online orders, but also get them dispatched, get them out to the consumer, make sure that the communication is working, and making sure we retain these customers once we work really hard to provide that good experience. So it's been a lot of challenges, but I would say overall the dispensaries that we've been working with have really taken them on. They roll up their sleeves, and they're creating some great experiences pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I think, to add on to that, I mean, I 100% agree with everything you said. I think that, the convenience is a factor that people are finding. I know the first time I went to buy on Amazon, it's kind of like, oh, what am I doing here? And then you get in there and you do it and you're like, this is fantastic. And the same thing with cannabis. Of course, buying in the store is still simple too. I think one of the other things that we're going to see change in a bigger way, and I think we're just starting to see the first pieces of this, is kind of an evolution in having to touch less things and making sure things are more clean and sterile. So, greater emphasis on retailers keeping sterile environments, clean, very clean environments, but also I think a consumer trend in moving towards things that are more touchless and, to your point, more technology based. So when I was young, I think there was a lot less thought of not touching things. And, when I was in college, people started putting thought and emphasis on like, maybe I don't want to touch the door handle on the bathroom. Maybe I'll use a paper towel, or maybe I'll, try to figure out how to just push the door. And as those things have evolved, I think this is kind of a natural evolution in that direction where people are going to be like, okay, how do I maybe not touch the buttons on the machine that every single person that's been in the store has been touching? And, some of the people are fine. To be fair, I think whether you're in a grocery store or a cannabis store, some of those people might be sick. Some of those people might be other things. So how do we, I think people's evolutionary thought will lend to more of how do I not touch this? How do we make this stuff more touchless? But yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about a rapidly developing subject that I think is kind of a heart of what we're getting at here, and that is customer experience, or what's more commonly referred to as CX, and I would say the professional marketing world. CX is really kind of the primary operational focus of the world's most successful retailers. So if you look at Amazon, you look at Starbucks, you look at these most successful retailers like Apple, all of these companies are very, very focused on customer experience. In fact, Jeff Bezos from Amazon has a mantra for the company, and he calls it customer obsession, which is really, it's just customer experience. And I know, Chris, you actually have some great Amazon experience, so maybe you can enlighten us in a minute. But all of these components of customer experience are really around, really what this is everything that consumer experiences. So if you're online, it's, how did you get to the site? What did you experience as you were going through and purchasing things? If you go to a store, it includes things like, how was the parking experience? If you're buying in delivery, it's how was the delivery person when they came and made the delivery? It's really everything that encapsulates the experience that a customer would have, hence the term customer experience. And so it's, because people might say, well, I don't understand, or I don't control the parking lot. And that is true. But when your customer comes, if they have to wait in a long line because you don't have a lot of parking, or if there's something about your parking lot that they don't like, or they don't feel it's safe, that might disenfranchise consumers. That might make them not want to buy from you. And so that affects your business. That affects the experience of the consumer in this broader customer experience term. And so all of these things are relevant in the business that you get, in the sales that you have. It all plays in, and Amazon, Starbucks, Apple, Mercedes-Benz, Target, really, again, all of the leading retailers across the planet, Four Seasons. If you look into these companies, you'll find they're all very, very heavy on customer experience. They understand that this is the most important thing. Again, Bezos's customer obsession. And so now with that, though, in the world that we're moving into, there's an underlying theme in all of this that we've kind of been touching on here. And interestingly, all of these companies are leveraging a lot of technology and sophisticated sales management systems to make this happen, because that's really kind of a quick and easy way to improve that experience. And so, noting that, Chris, I wanted to see, what do you think? What are your thoughts on how a retailer can create a better customer experience coming into this post-COVID world?
Yeah, great snippet there, Chris. And customer experience is so important to any company, let alone retail. I mean, retail, absolutely, definitely important. But, you mentioned Amazon. I've worked at Amazon. I'm very familiar with that customer obsession. And really, the thought here is, look, we want to create the best environment from, to your point, Chris, search all the way to buy. And then, again, like the community after that. So to answer your question directly, look, I've seen a lot of things change. You mentioned the parking. Well, curbside pickup, right? That was the thing in April and March of 2020 that we were getting hit up with. How do I run this? How do I do this? Why are we doing this? Well, it's easier for the customer. It's safer for the customer, right? They don't have to come into the store. So a lot of technology is being used to help this customer experience happen. And I would really say, it really starts at the API level. You need a system that's going to be able to speak to all the different ways a consumer can find out about you, right? So we're talking weed maps, Leafly, all the online search engines, all the online cannabis platforms. We saw all of our dispensaries, at least that work with Blaze, trying to get everywhere they could, any visibility they could get, they wanted to get up there. And they wanted to make sure not only did they just get their name up there, but things are connected in real time. Things are accurate, right? From an inventory, pricing, product standpoint, because that's a big part of customer experience. The worst thing that I could think of as a cannabis consumer and something that keeps me up at night is, hey, I go to place an order and sure enough, they're out of inventory of that one product that I was looking for and tracking down. So, that plays a huge role in at least that start of the customer experience. And then as you work down and you get kind of towards the store, we saw technology being leveraged for curbside pickup. You would text your number, from a parking spot. You'd say, I'm in parking spot 5, right, to a number. It said, I'm here. That was connected technology into these systems, into these queues, right, where, it would alert the staff, hey, someone's here ready to pick up. Is the order ready? All these pieces of communication are happening and are empowered by technology. So it's so important to have everything not just, present, but connected so that we can see status changes. Trying to think beyond curbside, right, and getting into the store, we saw a huge lift in making sure that when you walk into the store, any digital displays were up to date, they're accurate, they're have the right product on it, they're displaying the right information at the right time. That was really, really important. Chris, you mentioned just overall cleanliness in the store. We saw sometimes security folks were, instead of taking all these people in at once into the store, that had lines at the door, but they were using our iPhone app or something like that to scan and get these people preloaded right into the queue. So that as soon as they were ready, it was a great experience, open store, and they could get in there. So it really goes from, again, that first impression, right, that way that the consumer finds you. Technology is kind of interwoven all the way through that journey from getting in the store, placing your order, and then, Chris, we haven't got to that retention part yet, but a lot of technology is being used to help understand those behaviors and then invite them back and reward them, so we can retain these customers at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's two things there that are really good, actually, and one of them was what I was going to mention next. But so that's perfect. Thank you. Well, both of them, the menus. Online menus are another great point. I hadn't mentioned that earlier, but as we're seeing, I think, an increased adoption in online menus, especially if they're placed well. Sometimes I see stores, they place them and it's a little harder to read them. Yep. Some stores I've seen them placed well, and not only are they visually pleasing, but I think that they can convey information and specials and other things when they're done right. And so I think that we will see an increase in this kind of activity. But to your point about retention, that's the other thing I was going to bring up next or that was the piece I was going to speak to next, is that, so what does all this mean? What does customer experience mean? And why does it really matter? We spoke to how it can increase sales or decrease sales, because if people aren't having a good experience, they're not going to want to come back. And how does that translate into retention? And so, really quickly, retention is, if you're not as sure, retention is really the focus of, like, how do you bring customers back? Or literally, retention is getting your customers to come back. And some interesting statistics in the cannabis industry, retailers in cannabis tend to see massive fall off within the first 10 purchases. And so something like, and it depends on the retailer, it depends on the region, it depends on the type of service. Deliveries tend to see a higher attrition rate or lose more customers in those earlier states than stores do, and I'm not quite sure why that is, but we see, let's say, 50 to 80%, sometimes higher, attrition rate within the first 10 purchases of cannabis consumers, and so you have a very low retention rate. And I think there's a few things that play into that. One of them is, in cannabis, there's all these new stores that are opening. There's all these new products, new product types. There's first-time patient specials that have certainly been influential for people to try different places. And so there's all these new shiny objects always happening somewhere. So people are going around and they're trying different stores, they're trying delivery, and that pulls business away from your business. That decreases that retention rate. And so how do we improve that? And what does that have to do with customer experience? The statistics are sound and they're solid. If you provide a great customer experience, if somebody comes in and they're really happy with their service and they're happy with your product selection and they're happy with what you're offering in total, the scope of it, the customer experience is fantastic. The statistics are, the bottom line is, why would they leave? They're going to come back. People will come back if you're providing that great customer experience. So the heart of what we are discussing today is, in this evolutionary state of cannabis shifting, and in addition to that, in this state of the buying behaviors shifting, with higher leverage of technology in this post-COVID environment, how do you take advantage of things to increase that retention and make sure you're making those buyers sticky, you're keeping them? One other statistic that I think is important for everybody to consider is a lot of times people look at it and they say, well, in this transaction, we had maybe a gross profit or whatever, we made some money, but they don't think about their marketing costs. And so you have costs that you spend on your marketing. And when you look at that on a per customer basis, then what happens is you say, gosh, it takes me 3 to 4 purchases, typically, statistically in cannabis, before I break even on that customer. And so I have to get to about a 5th purchase before I'm making a true profit after you factor in my marketing costs. And so you have some customers that make a lot of purchases. You have a lot of customers that only make a few purchases. You have a relatively small number that actually make you a profit. So how do you increase that? How do you increase most of your customers to get most of them to buy 5, 10 times, get them to make you profit across all of those and make you a lot more net profit for the company? And that's really what retention is about. That's really the focus of it, and really the focus of improving that customer experience. So in line with that, how does COVID affect the way retailers should look at customer experience? I think we've touched on a chunk of this already, but Chris, I didn't know if you had anything else that maybe you'd want to add that we haven't. Yeah.
The only other thing I would mention is, we're talking about digital menus, and these are very important, but digital, we saw a huge shift from kind of a single channel focus, meaning, yeah, I've got my website and I'm happy with that, to an omni-channel focus, right? Which is going to be, hey, I'm going to sell not just on my website, but I'm going to sell in store. I'm going to offer delivery, curbside. These are different channels, right? I'm going to take orders from Weedmaps or from Leafly or some other marketplace, right, that's out there. So we saw a massive adoption in just trying to cast that net wider, in an effort, again, to make sure they've got the best experience for the consumer. The other thing I love your stats around that 5th visit and kind of breaking even. I mean, that's so true. So one of the things we haven't talked yet about is part of that stickiness. How do we continue to have that conversation with the customer and keep them engaged after that 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th visit? And what we saw is a lot of different promotions being played out, a lot of different angles on, any kind of specials are going over the weekend. And so giving, your consumers the right opportunity to buy the right products has been a big focus for a lot of our dispensaries, right? And communicating that in the right time. So there's a lot of pieces coming together here to make that retention story happen. But I would just say, the focus that I've seen as well is not just, it's an omni-channel focus. It's kind of like, we need to create the best experience anywhere and everywhere possible, right? And make sure that as soon as they come in the store, as soon as they pick up that product or get it delivered, they're going to come back and we can continue that conversation.
Right. One thing we haven't talked about, and this is very, very significant statistically in marketing. So Chris has got a wealth of information about the data, the transactions, technology. One of the things that I have maybe some respective experience with is actually being a cannabis operator. So Chris helps cannabis operators run and run more effectively. I've been a licensee in multiple states and at multiple levels with retail delivery, retail store, wholesale distribution. So I can't do it without understanding marketing at some level. We can't do it well, at least. And so I can tell you this, one thing that's becoming really, really big in understanding in creating a better customer experience is personalization. And even deeper than that is contextualization. Personalization is making the messaging, making the marketing seem and feel personal. So when you do a billboard, very hard to do. But if you guys are anybody's doing email marketing or text marketing, if you're doing mass channel marketing or basically mass text messaging, you can't really make that personal. But you can do things like personalized messages to follow up with your customers. Maybe you have a manager write a note, things that you can do, anything that you can do to make that consumer feel like they're getting a more personal experience makes a massive difference. And so whether that's through something you do in the store with your team, that's really important. Anything that you can do there is very valuable. Whether that's couponing, whether that's points or a retention program, or if you can do some of that with text and with email, any kind of level of personalization you can add is a tremendous value proposition. And statistically, adding personalization or creating kind of a more personal experience can increase conversion in your marketing efforts by like 30 to 50%. It can make a huge difference. Now, the other term that I added in there was contextualization. And contextualization is really important behind personalization. So contextualization is the timing. It's making it contextual. So if I send you, for example, a personalized text message and send it a month after you make a purchase, it might be personal, but it doesn't have any relevance because you're like, oh, this is kind of out of nowhere. But if I send it to you, if you make a purchase and I send you a text message the next day that says, hey, thank you so much for coming in and shopping, it's contextual, or it's contextualized because it has that context from when they made the purchase. They're like, oh, I made that purchase yesterday, and now this manager is sending me this nice note. It feels very personal. And so wherever you can, when you can, it's really significant to add in personalization and contextualization. And by the way, adding context and personalization together into your marketing actually yields almost a 300% increase in your conversion. It's a massive lift when you combine the two. And so adding personalization into what you're doing to broaden and deepen the customer experience has a tremendous impact on helping improve your retention. And another quick, interesting statistic to paint the importance of retention, you have about a 5 to 15% chance of acquiring a new customer through your marketing statistically. Lower if your marketing is not very good, but you have about that range. If you are marketing to an existing customer, you have about a 60 to 70% chance of conversion. And so your conversion odds are much, much higher with existing customers. And so it's not something that's thought of a lot. It's like, oh, I'm spending money on billboards and this advertising and that and events and whatever. I'm trying to get new customers. Great. What are you doing to keep your existing customers? Because your chances of keeping them are much higher, and they're much cheaper to market to because a text message is a whole lot less money than a billboard. So what are you doing? And those are things that you really need to think about. And that personalization, especially backed by contextualization, is a really fantastic thing to do. Okay, well, we're almost done here. Let me ask Chris one or two more questions, and then we're going to move on to the speed networking. So if you have any questions as we're moving along, please start typing them in the chat now. We're going to be looking for questions here and opening it up for questions in just a minute. So Chris, let me ask you, noting all of this, what changes do you think cannabis retailers should look at doing differently in this post-COVID environment? What is it? Any recommendations that you'd have for companies to maybe change or do differently that they should think about a little bit more?
Yeah, I would say continue to know your customer better, Chris. I mean, you just gave exactly the reason why we should be doing that. But that comes down to not just, hey, where do they live? Are they visiting? Are they close by? How'd you hear from us? But it's all the other things that are picked up by the bud tenders, by the dispatcher on the phone, right? That needs to be recorded, put in the system so that we can make better decisions. I would add that one of those pieces I see that's coming up a lot more is kind of applying, extra meta tag data, right? Extra metadata to that customer profile, so that an engine like RightMetrics can go do its thing properly. And so Chris mentioned timing, how important that is. That's why with Blaze, at least, we've put such an emphasis on integration support, because we realize, look, we're fantastic inventory management, we're fantastic at compliance and point of sale and delivery software. But at the end of the day, we still need to talk to these engines. We need to give those timestamps. We need to give all the information about that cart so that these engines can go do their thing. I would say the personalization really is a big point that we've been focused on. We launched a feature right before COVID. It was an in-store feature, a little stats button that the bud tender can hit right before the customer comes up to visit and start the ordering process. The bud tenders giving some quick information right away. What do they like to buy in terms of category? What's their average spend? Right? Where are they from? How many have they been to other stores? Within the network. That just immediately gives the bud tender some information to have a conversation with right away with that particular customer and be relevant with them. So I think we're going to see a lot more different types of technology come in. I think we're going to see a lot more emphasis on automation here over the next year or two, really bring some AI engines in, right? Looking at machine learning for certain things, especially around customer communications, and when's the right time, right? When's the buying sign that it's been 15 days, they haven't been back yet, or it's been 25 days, they should be back here. What's going on? How do we reach out to them and adding that personal touch? So I think, Chris, you covered a lot of great stuff. I'm just here to help connect the dots from a technology standpoint and help drive, our customers, our dispensaries into the future.
Well, and don't sell yourself short. I mean, to be fair, you've been in the industry a long time. You come from Amazon, so you've got a lot of sophistication and wherewithal there.
Yep.
But then on top of that, I think people don't think about it in this way. It's funny in our industry. I think people don't give enough respect to the attorneys. When you look at it, at the heart of it, the attorneys are the glue that holds everything together. Everybody in this industry uses an attorney in a heavy way. And at the same way, everybody uses some kind of ERP or point of sale system in a heavy way. And the distinction with point of sale systems or ERPs is that you guys have all the data. You know all the numbers of what's really going on. And so don't sell yourself short. I appreciate that. I appreciate the humility. You're always a humble guy, but you've got all the information of what's happening, all the data. It's you've got some fantastic and real knowledge, not just I think this or I think that, but actual real knowledge to back it up. So
yeah, we're excited. At the same time, we understand the responsibility. We've got to be really good custodians of that data. We do keep that data private from, for our dispensaries, right, to leverage. We take PI super seriously, but it's really interesting to see these reports come out and actually have some live data to go against and run some numbers and say, hey, is this really true in the segment that we're looking at? And that's been pretty fascinating. So expect more to come from Blaze on that. We're going to be contributing a lot more to some industry news and highlights based off of what we're seeing. But overall, it's been pretty fascinating to watch, just the buying trends in the last year change and where they're at now has been even better. I mean, we're seeing carts already are lifted since COVID started by almost $5, which is pretty awesome across the board on average.
Oh, wow.
And we're just seeing that because I think we're seeing a lot more customers venture out into new products. They're getting more comfortable with cannabis and saying, okay, I've tried flower, I've tried an edible, what's a vape pen? And we're seeing just other things being added to the cart and more exploratory type of consumer behaviors. So a lot more to come, like I mentioned, but pretty exciting and where we're at today.
Awesome. Well, I haven't seen any questions, and I don't know.
Looks like we have one question, Chris. Bobby's sending us cashless payment systems for pickup order recommendations.
Chris, you want me to take that?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So one of the things that has changed or is kind of in flux, we talked about the technology stack changes. Payments is historically pretty difficult to do in cannabis, especially when we're talking about delivery orders. So cash ATM is one of those methods that is arguably legal in this world, in this space. Something that we offer through Blaze Pay. That said, it's really difficult when, for delivery specifically, speaking to the question, you're in areas that don't have service. And it makes things very challenging to collect payments at that point of sale or at the point, of handoff. And so, two answers to that. One is, seriously consider looking at an online ACH solution for your customer so that they can pay ahead of time. That's definitely advised, and make sure that they're going to be there when you show up because they put money down. But secondly, for those that are running a cash ATM system, the internet connection on those, the cellular connections are not great. I would really encourage you to take a look at, Verizon's got great service out here in Southern California. Look at their 5G hotspots. It's a $20 a month investment. And what we've seen is it can help strengthen that connection, ultimately process those sales quicker with the cash ATM, terminal at the point of sale. So a couple different answers, but really would encourage you to take a look at paying ahead with ACH. It's going to be probably the best bet.
Awesome. Thank you. And looks like we got one other quick question from Kathy. Kathy, always good to see you. Thank you for joining. Will the BCC let us keep curbside? That's a good question. My guess would be, reading the tea leaves and having been pretty active in the lobbying aspect for the last several years. Short term, I'm not sure. I think longer term, I think for sure it'll happen. I don't know what the horizon might be like for both of those in terms of timing, but if you look at, I think a good indicator is delivery. And if you look at it, BCC came out and they were very tight on how much you could have in the car for delivery. And now we're seeing a much bigger dollar amount. And I think, directionally curbside makes sense. Functionally, it's safer than delivery because you've got, you're there at the store. So, you can ID the person. So I don't see that going away, but to be fair and to protect myself in this statement, always hard to guess what the regulations will do.
Chris, I got a spin on that question for you because I've been getting a lot of these questions. Drive-throughs. What's your take on this?
Well, they have a drive-through. In fact, I think Harborside's got a drive-through in the Palm Desert.
Yeah, municipalities. It seems to be legal. I'm just curious, is it going to stay? Do you think it's going to continue to thrive out here? What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I always look at is kind of like direction of things, and I'm like, okay, if we're in a world where they're going to start having lounges, I think if conceptually, I'm like, if they're going to get that comfortable with people having that kind of easy access and consuming on site. I mean, it's functionally very different at drive-through, so don't get me wrong. But as I think we see things soften, I think drive-throughs will be allowed. I just don't know how much demand there's going to be for a drive-through. You could certainly sell alcohol through a drive-through. What was the last time you went to go buy alcohol through a drive-through? I had a desire to do that. I've never had a desire to go, man, I wish I could pick up some alcohol quickly in a drive-through. So I think the potential could be there. I'm not sure if the demand is going to be there to really drive that. So it'll be interesting to see. Okay, well, let's do this. I know we've got another portion of this, which is the speed networking. Really exciting. For those of you who have not done speed networking before, it's a really fantastic feature that we offer as the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. It allows you to connect with people literally all over the continental US and beyond. We have people from Toronto. We've had people in Mexico. It looks today like we've got a great mix of people from all over the US. Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. And this is a great opportunity. These are really kind of interesting. It defaults you to a 2-minute chat. You can extend it if you'd like. For those of you that haven't tried it, I really highly encourage you to do that. You can click the networking button on the left side of the screen. It's a little handshake just about the middle of the screen. It says networking. We're going to go ahead and convert over to that now. We're going to open it up. You'll have 25, 30 minutes, a little bit plus. And as you go through, this is a great chance for you to meet and engage with people in the cannabis industry or interested in getting into the cannabis industry from all over the US, again, Canada and Mexico. So please check it out. Take a few minutes, get in there, make some good business connections, make this session today valuable, not just in the educational piece, but in hopefully building some business opportunities for you with some new connections. That being said, we're going to do that. Chris Violas, thank you so much for your time today. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend. We appreciate having you on behalf of the Chamber, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.